Caleb from Brownells here, and in today's video we're going to be putting a few upgrades from Volquartsen in the Ruger Mark IV. So if you're not familiar with the Ruger Mark IV, it's just the latest iteration of the classic Ruger 22 long rifle handgun. They've been making this thing forever, since all the way back since the Mark I, believe it or not. And then they had 2, 3, and then the 4. Big difference with the 4, if you've ever messed with any of the older ones, is that takedown mechanism, which we'll get into in just a minute here. But the kits we're showing here will only fit in the Mark IV. Also, the Mark IV 2245 variant. So let's just kind of jump right into it. First thing you're going to need, of course, is the firearm, Ruger Mark IV, alright? And then we also have the Volquartsen Accurizing Kit, which is just basically a redo of the entire fire control group. It does a number of things. It provides you with a overtravel stop, a pre-travel adjustment, as well as it removes the magazine safety. And the magazine safety is kind of just a pain all around. I understand why they did it, but I don't think I know anyone who actually likes it, so this gets rid of it. And then also what we're going to be putting in is the extended slide stop lever, or slide catch, I should say. And also by Volquartsen, and this goes in pretty easy. We'll actually do that at the end. So we'll just set that aside there. Tools we're going to need. I have a pair of needle nose pliers here. You can use some hemostats as well if you have those. Those will work just fine. And the kit also comes with some Loctite, which we'll get to that as well. I have a Brownells magnetip set. We're needing this for the Allen attachment, so if you just have a good set of Allen keys, that'll work just fine as well. And then I have some punches, and the punches, we're not going to be hammering on anything, so we don't need a hammer, but I'll show you exactly how we're going to be using these. We're going to use them as kind of like placeholders, as well as just kind of help line things up and gently push pins out. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and pull the lid off, because we're only going to need a few of those. And then the firearm itself. So first thing we're going to do, of course, is make sure the firearm is unloaded. So we'll remove the magazine. You will need the magazine, though. This is one of the most useful tools out of all of these that we're going to be using. And I'll show you when we get there. And then, of course, we will check our chamber, make sure it's unloaded. We'll repeat that step just because that's it's good to do. All right. So now what we're going to do is take the firearm apart. And in order to get this one apart, all you need to do is push this button on the back and lift up. Now we'll note that that button will only go in if it is on safe. So we're going to put our selector to safe, push our button here, cam upward, and it'll just kind of cam off the front there. You can see how it keys into that front piece. That'll come right off. Now with the upper assembly, which is actually the serial number part, which is interesting enough, we're just going to take this and set it aside. We're not going to need that again until we reassemble everything. But we're going to keep the magazine close, because that's going to help us line up our Sear. Alright, so now the first step is to take these grips off. We're going to take the grip panels off of both sides. And let's see, take our hex bit here. And just unscrew them. There's one. Flip it and reverse it. And two. Something to be mindful of here is this little piece down underneath the grip, because if you bump that in any way, it'll want to fly out on you. The only thing this does is actually just provide some extra leverage. So when you hit the magazine release, it helps that it's spring loaded, so it just helps shoot the magazine out. That's all it does. But just be aware that that can fall out. All right. Also, I didn't mention this, but you don't have to use a vise, but using a vise is going to be extremely helpful for this. So I have these hard plastic vice jaws in the Brownells gunsmith vise. Alright, so now that we have the grips off, everything's ready to go on that end, we need to start just pulling out all of the old guts of this gun. And the first thing we're going to need to take out is going to be the hammer and all of that assembly there. And actually the best thing to do is to take tension off that hammer before we do that. So I'm just going to insert the magazine. Alright. I'm going to place my thumb on the hammer and then gently let that come forward. Just like so. And you can take your magazine out for now. And then to get the hammer and everything else out, we're just going to need to take out the safety. And the safety is held in on the right hand side by one screw, because this is an ambidextrous safety. So we're just going to use an Allen bit to take that screw out. This is going back in the gun, of course, so we'll set that in our keep pile here. Alright, and then now we just need to push out from this side. And what I actually like to do is just kind of grab one side and wiggle here. And just pull it all the way out, and all this stuff will come shooting out. So this safety indicator here, or safety piece I should say, we're going to keep that for sure. Selector goes over there with it. And this is the old hammer setup with the magazine safety attached to it. That's this giant piece here. And we'll just set that aside. And then the pin for the Sear, as you can see, just fell out because the only thing holding this pin in is spring tension and the grip panels. And for those of you who didn't see it before, this pin came out of that hole directly underneath where that safety came out. So straight down from there, and it was in there. So once that's out, the Sear and the Sear spring will come out, and we're going to be replacing those as well. And the difference between this one and previous models is that your hammer spring piece here, the part that encapsulates your hammer spring and adds tension to it and everything, stays in the gun. We don't need to take any of that out, so we can just leave all that in there, which is great. So now what we'll go ahead and do is remove the trigger and trigger bar. And if you notice here, I had this one flipped up, but the plunger and spring that puts tension on this piece, if you lift up on this, they'll just fall right out. And they came out of the trigger via this hole right here. And we're going to replace those as well. We have new ones, so we'll set those in the discard pile. Alright, now we need to get this trigger out. So there's a pin that goes through and holds it into the frame, and that is held in by this spring. You can see the tail of it right here, but what it does, it goes into the frame and comes forward underneath this pin, and it goes in a groove underneath that pin, so it's keeping the pin in. Alright, so if we put a little bit of pressure on it, we'll be able to by hand pull this pin out. Alright, and I'm going to do this in the vise, so I'll just kind of show you what I'm going to do here before I get it where you can't see it. But you can see the spring running down this way here. I'm just going to push down on it, and as I push down on it, I'm going to apply pressure to this end, because this end is bigger, right? So I'm going to apply pressure to this end, and it's going to pop right out. Alright, so I'll use 2 punches for this. Alright, so as I mentioned, I need to push down on that spring. The other end of it is in the very front. So if you just push down up there, then push out with this one, just like so. And before I get that all the way out, I'll show you the front of that spring as well. But the nose of it is right there. So it curls in, and then it comes up. So I just push down on the end of it, and the pin came right out. And I'll show you the groove in the pin as well once I get it out of here. that groove right there is the one that the spring rides in. So we'll put this pin in the keep pile. And then that piece right there was our old slide catch, which we have a new one, so we'll put this in the discard pile. If you're doing this without, because this doesn't come with the Accurizing Kit, if you're doing this without that, obviously you want to keep this. Okay, and then other pieces will start to fall out. This is just a bar that the slide catch rides on, and this front piece here, whenever you actuate your slide catch, it cams it upward to catch the bolt. I say slide catch, it's a bolt catch. There's no slide, it's just a bolt. Alright. And then with that out, the trigger and trigger bar will also come out, and we will get rid of those as well. And then as you can see, so that spring that retains the trigger is wanting to fall out on me. I'll just gently persuade it to get back into its home right there, because we don't need to take this out, because the first thing we're going to do is put in a new trigger and trigger bar. Alright, so that is as far as we need to go with stripping this frame. So I will take the new trigger and the 2245 version. So this is a metal frame. 2245 is a polymer frame, and they mention on the bag that they include a shorter screw for if you're using the 2245 version, which is stuck inside of this spring, so I'm going to need to get it out of there. That little screw right there is the one for the 2245. And it goes right there. You can see the back end of it. And that's just for overtravel. So what you'll do is you will tighten this screw until your hammer will fall, your sear will break without going back too far, so you don't have excessive overtravel, which I'll show you how to tune that at the end of this. Alright, so I'm going to set this in this pile as well, because I'm going to keep all these parts together anyway, so I'm going to move that out of the way. As I mentioned, the spring and plunger that came out of the old trigger, we have a replacement for those, so that's going to go there. We have the trigger bar, which is great. Alright, we'll need that. And that's all I'm going to open up for now, and we'll just go ahead and get this stuff installed. Okay, so what I will do is take your trigger just like so. You'll notice how the post coming off the top is offset to the right side. So like logic would tell you that this sits on the left side so that there's room and it's everything's nice and flush now, but that's not the case. This actually goes on the side that overhangs. So this trigger bar should be overhanging the side of the trigger, just like this. So that's how we'll do it. And what we'll do is don't worry about the spring and detent yet. We'll put that in after, because if we did it now, it would just fall out and get in the way, and you don't need to worry about it right now. Okay, so what we'll do, and what I like to do is hold the frame just like this so that this spring in here doesn't want to fall out. And so we'll just hold it horizontally here. We'll take the trigger and trigger bar together and drop them down in here. All right. And with that in, we'll take our trigger pin here and just get it started just a little bit. All right, and then that piece that fell out earlier, part of the slide catch here, this will go in just like so, So this open loop in the front will be where our trigger pin goes through. So we'll set it in there, and you'll need to make sure you can get this piece on the back end here. You'll need to get that under there, just like so. You can see it come up from the frame here. So I'll position that, and then if you can see, I slide the rest forward to line up with the trigger pin. So I'll do that one more time, just in case, just so you can follow a little better here. All right, so I'm gonna drop it in, making sure the back piece goes through the cut in the mag well. All right, and then I slide the rest forward. And then I push through, push the trigger pin through, and you may have to come to the other side here and just look through the hole visually and line it up. And I'm going to do that now because I can't line it up if it's facing you. And you can use another tool to help you out here too. Alright, so we push that forward and on top of the spring. And when I say the spring, if you look in the top here, you can see the spring. So when you push this forward, it just naturally goes right up over that spring. And to make sure it's seated on that spring properly, all you need to do is just lift up on it, and it should snap back down, just like so. All right, and then another thing you need to do is just give the pin a push. Make sure you can't push it out by hand, right? So that's how we know it's captured properly. And then at this point, you can try to put your slide catch back on there. And the reason I kind of saved that for last, so if you notice, you slide it on, you can't get the back end on there. That's perfectly fine. The same screw size that we use to take off our mag release is the same one that holds the stud in. So rather than try to fight with that while we're doing the trigger, I just like to remove the stud and replace it. And if you can't see what's going on here, it literally, it's just a screw that goes in that hole right there, that top one. And we're just gonna put it back in place. And just be careful not to over tighten it. There we go. All right, perfect. And once our grip panels are on, it'll help hold that on too, so you don't have to worry about it walking out or anything like that. Okay, so we are most of the way there. We're probably about halfway there. All right, so now we'll go ahead and take out our sear, our hammer, our sear spring, all that stuff. All right, so we have our sear spring right here. That's this piece. We have the sear, which is right there, this shiny new Volquartsen one, compared to the old one here. So these are the pieces that are being replaced. And then we have the hammer and the bushing right here. All right. And for the bushing, you want to make sure that the large head of this thing is on the right-hand side. And an easy way to remember is that the bushing literally just rides in the cut on the back of the trigger bar. That's why it's there. Okay, so we have those pieces. And then we also have bushings that go on the bushings for the bushing. But in all seriousness, what these do, they just take up the space from the magazine safety, because the hammer itself is the same dimension, and you just need a little extra room in there so that your hammer isn't wobbling around in the frame. So that's why these exist. And then this one goes on the Sear pin if you're using a 2245, which we are not, so we don't need to worry about that. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is install the Sear. You have to start with the Sear. And the way I like to do that is I will try to find a way to do this so you can kind of see here. Maybe I can do it this way. This is going to be a better view for you and a terrible view for me, but I'll try and deal with it. Alright. So the Sear spring goes in just like this with the long leg down and the short leg up. And if you notice, both spring legs make a flat line. That line faces the back, right? So it's going to go in just like this. The belly of the spring, if you will, is going to face forward, all right? Just like your mother-in-law, right? Her belly, you know, we won't get into it. So that's going to go just like that, all right? And for this, I like to use some pliers. And if you have some, like I said, if you have some hemostats, that works great too. But we're just gonna go right here in the back. So you have this empty area back here, and then you have the mag well. Make sure you don't put it in the mag well. It goes behind the mag well. And I'm just gonna grab it down here. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a punch. I'm gonna use a larger punch. Let's go with the, what are you? A 1/8. And then the Sear hole, which is directly below the hammer pin hole, right? We talked about that. You'll just drive it in, and you're going to drop that. That's okay. This is a good opportunity for me to kind of double down and show you which hole I was talking about. But this hole right here, this is the Sear pin hole. All right, and another thing you can do here, which we will do, is insert the magazine. All right, so we got our magazine in there, so this will help stuff from falling forward. All right, so let me adjust this just a bit. There we go. So this goes in. And I'm going to take my punch to capture it right through the hole. And then right through the other side there. This time without dropping anything, because I can only see a very small amount of it because I'm showing the side I would usually be looking down is facing the camera. Alright, so now I need to determine which way the Sear is going to go. So if you look at the Sear, you'll notice that one side is completely cut out, and then the other side just has a cut in it, like this, right? The side that is completely cut out for that spring. So the Sear itself is going to go in just like this. So the hole is on the bottom, right, when it's going in. The hole's on the bottom, and the cutout is facing the left, which is also that spring. All right, so we're going to just install it right on in there. I'm going to move my punch out of the way just enough and drop my Sear in. And what you're going to need to do, I wanted to do this with it facing the camera, but I'm not going to be able to because this is kind of tricky. But what we're going to do is compress the short leg of that spring on this shelf so that we load the Sear under spring tension, right? And then install it from there. So I'm going to turn this vertical. Alright. And you can also use, like I said, if you have some hemostats, great. I do not. I'm going to use some pliers. Just be very gentle with them. Alright, and we got it in there. And I will show you what it's kind of doing now. And then I'll put the pin in. Alright, so if you notice, it's kind of flopping back on me there. But it goes in just like this, so that if you push forward, there's spring tension on it, right? You can kind of see it there. But then at the same time, if you tilt it back, it'll flop back on you. So it goes in just like that. Okay, and then now all I'm going to do is take the Sear pin and push my punch out with it, and this will keep everything nice and aligned. There we go. Okay, and that's in there. Perfect. So now what I'm going to do is take my hammer and start kind of prepping everything to go in there. So the Sear needs to be forward, and then we also almost forgot, so the spring, trigger spring, is going to go right in that hole. And if you need to, well, it's not going to because it's in the vise, but you can take your magazine out now if you need to. I'm just going to use a punch to help me out here. Springs in the hole. And the detent, if you notice, the head is large, the shaft is small, so that shaft goes into the spring, just like so. Then the trigger bar should have spring tension. Alright. Now, something to take note of here. With the hammer, it has a tail on it. And this tail needs to go, whenever we're putting everything in, the tail of this needs to go right where my punch is right now, if you can see that. So that is the cup that pushes down on the actual hammer spring itself. Like I said, it's all captured, so you don't have to worry about it flying out. But this tail has to be on that. Right there. It's a little bit lighter than the housing it's in, so you can kind of see it there, but it forms like a cup. And just put the tail on the cup, push down, you're good to go. The two spacers here, these two bushings for the bushing, if you will, you have a thick one and a thin one. Just like so. Alright. So, especially for if you're using the metal frame gun, so not the 2245, start with the thin one. And it's going to go on the opposite side of that wide end there. So it'll be on the left-hand side of the gun, if you will. So it'll go on there, opposite side of the trigger bar. So this will pretty much just drop right in there. If for whatever reason you have excessive play back and forth, then you can try to use the larger one. But honestly, with the metal frame, the small one should work just fine. Okay, so with this, we will take, what I like to do here is get it in this position right here, so the tail is on the back side, puts the bushing into the cut in the trigger bar, and then bring everything downward. And then I'm also going to capture it from the right side of the gun. So I'm going to come in through this side and slide it through. And I'll show you why I'm doing that here in just a moment. Also, make sure your sear is in the forward position, not flopped back like that. Okay, so flip it forward and close. And what I'm doing right now is making sure that tail is going into that cup, just like we talked about. And you should feel it pushing forward on the sear, which if you need to, you can get in there with a punch like I'm using right now. I'm going to switch to a smaller one and just kind of push the sear forward a little bit, but I think we're okay without doing that. So I'm just going to capture it from the other side, but alright, there we go. So now at this point, you may be looking in there saying, yeah, there's a huge gap in there, so I need the bigger spacer. Not yet, because you need to take your safety piece. Remember this colorful little guy here that we took out? What we're going to do, so that hole right there is also going to line up with the hammer. And you see how there's a shelf cut on it right there? That little shelf is going to hook on to the top of that sear, because remember how the sear kind of made a scoop at the top? This is going to lock on to the new sear just like that. So I'll pull my punch out just enough here, and then just drop this piece down on top. If you start from the front and cam it back like this, it'll naturally kind of grab onto the sear. So that's the easiest way to do it. And then push the punch through. Alright, there's a little bit of play in there, not a ton, but that'll shrink down even more once we get the hammer pin in, or the selector, or safety if you will. So if you want to try the larger bushing and it fits for you, great. If it's too tight, it's going to cause issues though, so I'd rather it be a little loose than a little too tight. So we'll just set that aside because we know we're not going to use it. And now what we will do is I'll take another punch here actually. Or actually no, I will push this one in straight from this side. So if you notice on the back of your safety, there's a detent on the back that can come out, so make sure that's still there. And we're just going to take this, that detent's going to face the rear, and this extension here is going to go right in behind your punch. So just carefully push it in, making sure you line up each piece at each step here. Alright, and what I was doing is just kind of working the punch in a circular motion just to line everything up. And once you get to the back, you may have to lift up on that safety piece right here. So you can see it, the one coming up there. Lift up on it to make room for the safety to go inside the cut, and then just push straight in. And then that detent, you can either use a punch to push the back in. This one's actually really close. Yeah, there it goes. Didn't need to with this one. And just wiggle it into place. Okay, so what you should be seeing at this point, to know you did this right, is when you work the safety, you should see, when the safety's on, you should see white at the bottom. When it's off, you should see red on the top. That's how you know you did this right. And then your hammer itself, if you take the hammer and push back, it should have spring tension. If you can't push it back, that means you didn't line that tail up with the cup. But everything is working great now. So what we'll do at this point is just take out the magazine. I will put the other side of the ambidextrous safety on here. This goes on the exact same way it came off. And it is keyed into place so that the levers line up on both sides. Then we're going to hope we didn't lose that screw, and we didn't. And we're just going to thread it back in. All right, great. So to get everything reassembled, you're going to have to cock the hammer. But before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and put the grips back on. And those go back on just as you think they would. So 2 screws, and is that the right size? It is, okay. And if you felt like I was moving a little bit too fast throughout this process, then use the pause button. You have there's a pause button. Because sometimes when I do these, people are like, "You're moving too fast, slow down." And I'm like, dude, pause button. Or if you got one of those fancy players, you're using, I don't know if you're using YouTube or whatever, wherever you're watching this. Like, you may even just be able to like slow it down, or if you're really high speed, you can speed it up. You can do this on like 1.5 speed, or like 2 speed. If you do it on 2.0 speed, then I'm gonna send you something cool, not a gift card, because that costs money. Maybe like a virtual card. I don't know what I'm saying. Anyway, all right, so we got the grips back on, and now we just need to cock the hammer. So the easiest way to do that is to literally just, you can just reach up there and do it. Oh, safety has to be off. If you try to cock the hammer with the safety on, you're going to be like, it's going to be so hard. So just turn the safety off, cock the hammer, then you can put the safety back on. Because the safety has to be on for you to get the top side back on. And then we'll do a little function test action here. I don't think we have any extra parts, which is good. Oh, before we do that, we need to adjust the overtravel and pre-travel. And actually here, nope, we'll do that with it on. Changed my mind. Okay. So safety's on. Just cam your front bar in and make sure your bolts is pushed forward, and then just collapse everything down. And it's not going on because I have it not flat. There we go. Okay. And then squeeze. There we go. Great. Everything seems to be functioning properly. So I'm going to be, I will warn you right now, I'm going to be dry firing the heck out of this thing. If you're not comfortable dry firing your 22, you can use like a drywall anchor, I think, or you can just buy a snap cap, whatever, put it in the chamber. But I'll be dry firing it. So the first thing to do before you adjust any of the screws is just cock it, and then notice how much better the trigger pull is, which is great. And then we have a ton of overtravel. And just a little bit of pre-travel. So, just in case you don't know, pre-travel is that take up right there. So, that's pre-travel before the trigger engages the sear and releases the hammer. And then overtravel, I'll try to show you here. So if I pull the trigger, hammer falls. Overtravel is everything after that. So we have that much space. That is a ton of overtravel. So you don't want to set it up so that there's 0. You just want to minimize it. Because if you set the overtravel so that the brake and the overtravel stop are almost right at the same point, then you end up with a trigger that'll probably double. So you'll be just under the recoil, the small amount of recoil that the 22 has, right? That'll be enough to get you to accidentally shoot a second shot that you didn't intend to shoot. So you do need to provide a little bit there, and I'll kind of show you there how we do that. Also, a ball end hex wrench is great for this because you're working in a confined space. So I'm going to take this one and put that in the discard pile as well. And grab these Bondus ones, which are great. Alright, and I will start with pre-travel. And pre-travel is going to be this top screw here. And the reason this kit came with Loctite is so that you could Loctite these screws where you want them. And let me see if I can actually use the ball ends for this. I may not even be able to. And you're just going to tighten it until it starts engaging the front of the frame. And then, yeah, there we go. And then takes out some of that slack. Same situation here. You don't want it right on top of the break point because it can cause the same exact problem with doubling and stuff like that. So you want to have a little bit of slack there. The goal here is to just take out as much as you can. All right, let's see how that looks. If I can get the tool out of here now. There we go. And also make sure you're checking this while it's cocked because there will be different amounts of trigger play between whether it's cocked or not. So always make sure you're doing your adjustments while it's cocked. And as you can see, there's a little bit of play there, but nothing nearly as much as was there before. So as far as pre-travel goes, that's pretty good. I think I'm going to stick with that. And then for over-travel, I'm just going to go ahead and start adjusting this thing now. I'll go a little more. Ooh. So I'll kind of do it so you can see here. That's the wall. You can see there's a little bit of gap under there, which is good. And the brake. That feels pretty good. I may actually back off of that Overtravel just a hair. That's a really good trigger. Okay. That is a night and day difference over the factory trigger. Awesome. So very lightweight, minimal movement as far as pre-travel and over-travel goes. So just a really good upgrade for your Ruger Mark IV. So we basically just took a, I mean, it's still technically, this is a target gun, but we took a non-Gucci race gun and just put a really nice trigger in it. And now this is a phenomenal target gun. So, yep, that's all there is to it. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or experience with this kit or similar kits, let us know in the comments down below. As always, if you need help with anything for any reason ever, feel free to give us a call on the tech line. We'll be happy to help you out. And also, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, and the notification bell as well for more videos like these. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.